The next stage is when various necessary additives are added to the clinker, depending on the type of cement, after which all components are again ground and mixed. Finally, the obtained raw materials are sent to the prepared hopper for storage with the help of special machines. There, the cement is packed into bags of different capacities, and then it's sent for further shipment. Wet cement production technology. The next method is wet, and this means that the creation of the cement mixture takes place with a direct addition of liquid. It's not difficult to guess that this method is less popular than the one we just talked about. Carbonate chalk and silicate clay are used in its production. It's also possible to use iron-containing additives, such as BOF sludge and pyritic residues. Wet, dry, or combined. Technology of cement production by dry method. I'll say right away that from the perspective of economic profitability, this method is the most attractive. Apparently, that's why it's also used in almost every large production facility. What are its peculiarities? Firstly, it's the dryness of the components at absolutely all working stages. The basis of material production is based on the chemical and physical characteristics of the raw materials used. Each of the elements is necessarily subjected to an additional drying process and then ground to powder. The components are combined and mixed, or more scientifically, homogenized. The output can then be homogenization silage or raw meal, which is sent to the kiln to undergo a delicate roasting process. It is this fired material that is called clinker, such as rotten stone or dolomite. In addition, in the natural environment, there is already a ready-made clinker, which does not need to be fired at all. Yes, do not be surprised. It's marl, such a rock. But in nature, there's very little of this material, and so manufacturers create clinker themselves, artificially. The second stage consists in thoroughly mixing the clinker components in special containers, and this is also a critical process. After the work is done, the resulting mixture is fired for a long time in special furnaces, thanks to which all the components actively begin to interact. As a result, the lime and clay form some balls, the size of walnuts, and only then the components again need to be mixed and crushed. As for the technology of cement production itself, it definitely has its own peculiarities, depending on the method. Assumed as an independent raw material and as a component in the composition of concrete or reinforced concrete. Without further ado, it's clear that the process of its manufacture is quite expensive and labor-intensive. And although today manufacturers on the market offer a huge number of types of cement, still, the production technologies remain standard. Let's talk about the stages of cement production. It's worth noting that the production of this building material should be divided into two main stages: obtaining clinker and quality grinding of the components. Clinker is a special mixture of natural character, which as a rule is made of lime, about 75%, and clay, about 25%. All of its components are necessarily fired in special furnaces under the influence of high temperatures. It's also possible to replace clay with other components of natural origin. The temperature required for combustion is about 2012 degrees Fahrenheit. If they burn beyond this limit, the output of the finished product will be brittle and weak. And if the temperature limit is lower, the bricks will not gain full strength and are likely to absorb moisture from the atmosphere. Hence, the firing must be done properly and well to meet all the requirements of a good brick. As you can see for yourself, the production process is quite complex and labor-intensive, but at the same time, it's interesting and diverse. Any construction or repair work is impossible without the use of a universal building material, cement of different types and grades. We're so used to this product that we don't even think about the question, how is cement made? Let's dig deeper into the complex technology of production of such an important and necessary building material. Let's go. In construction works, cement they can simply crack. Drying can be done naturally or artificially. In natural drying, bricks are stacked in stacks of 8 to 10 ladders. The bricks in these stacks should be arranged in such a way that air circulation between them is free. The drying period is typically between 3 and 10 days, but this also depends on the weather conditions. The drying pads are also prepared at a higher level than the normal ground to prevent the bricks from getting rainwater. In some situations, however, artificial drying is also used, as it does not require a very large space and is completely independent of weather conditions. For such drying, the heat of exhaust steam is used, and due to the use of special technology, the entire mass dries completely evenly. In the firing process, the dried bricks are fired either in clamps, small batch, or in kilns, large batch, to a certain degree temperature. At this stage, the bricks gain hardness and strength, so it's an important stage in production. And it's carried out in two ways, with dry clay machines and plastic clay machines. So the plastic clay machines contain some sort of rectangular shaped hole in them, and when the hardened clay is placed in them, it comes out through it. Now the rectangular strips coming out of this hole are cut with wire to get the required thickness of the brick. These are also called wire bricks. At this stage, these raw bricks are already fully prepared for the drying process. Dry clay machines, on the other hand, are definitely designed to help save the producer time. It's possible to put mixed clay into these machines, skipping the hardening step, as it is done directly in this equipment by adding water. The method of molding in the production process of bricks is usually selected taking into account the peculiarities of further use of the finished product. After molding, bricks contain some moisture, which must be gotten rid of. Why? Simply because during further firing, during burning, the mold is then lifted upward, and the raw brick in the ground is revealed. The next step is to wet the mold again by dipping it in water, and repeat the same process. And it's called slop molding. Sometimes the inside surface of the mold is sprinkled with sand or ash instead of being immersed in water, which is called sand molding. Counting marks of bricks are made with a pair of pallet boards. A counting mark refers to a depth mark that is applied to the raw brick during the molding process. But the table molded brick is similar to the hammer molding process in its basic process. But in this case, the bricks are made on a 6.5 by 3.2 feet table. And it should be noted that ground molding is more economical as compared to table molding. If an order is received for the production of bricks in large quantities, then machine molding in this case will be much more economical and practical. In this way, the clay acquires a plastic structure and becomes suitable for further molding. As for the molding process, the resulting prepared clay is molded into special rectangular brick molds. This process is usually carried out in two ways, depending on the scale of the project. It can be hand molding for small-scale projects and machine molding for large-scale projects. If brickmaking is on a small scale and labor is also cheap, one can go for hand molding. Rectangular molds for these cases are made of wood or steel and open at the top and bottom. There are also two types of manufacturing in hand molding, which are ground and table molded bricks. As for the ground mold, in this ground molding process, first level the ground and sprinkle it with sand or ash. After placing the wet mold in the ground and filling it with hardened clay, pressing firmly to fill all the corners of the mold. The excess clay is removed with a metal or wooden punch or wire. The next stage is weathering. You may think that this stage is not too important, but I hasten to change your mind. The purified clay must necessarily be exposed to the atmosphere for its softening. The weathering period can take about 3 to 4 weeks, or generally a full rainy season. Typically, clay material is excavated just before the rainy season for larger projects. Next, we have mixing. If there's a need to add some ingredient to the clay, it's better to do it at this stage by loosening the material and spreading that very ingredient over it. Then it's necessary to take a certain portion of clay in your hands and direct it up and down in a vertical direction. That is, to do the very mixing. Lastly, there's the hardening process. In this stage, water is added to the clay and pressed or stirred. Pressing is done by cattle or human feet for small-scale projects, and for large-scale projects, a special pug mill is used as a grinding machine. Rolling out the clay is where it all starts in this challenging endeavor. It's clear that the quality production processes require pure clay. The top layer of soil can always contain various impurities, so the clay in this soil layer, which is about 7.9 inches deep, is simply discarded. This process is also called unwinding. After the topsoil is removed, the clay is dug out of the ground and laid out on level ground. Then the cleaning process takes place. At this stage, the clay is cleaned of stones, various vegetation, and other impurities. If there are numerous solid particles, the clay is washed and sieved to remove all kinds of stones from the clay mass. In the majority of cases, special stone-removing rollers are used, and after this procedure, the clay is sent to the box feeder. At the outlet of this machine, movable rakes are placed, which partially break the emerging pieces and push the clay into the runners, where the final grinding takes place.